Info Factory Track 6.0, Supervisor Processing in Time Track. Each employee belongs to a single work group. Supervisors are assigned ownership of one or more work groups. Work groups can be owned by multiple supervisors. The supervisor homepage is the starting point for a supervisor. And the primary roles of the supervisor are authorizing and processing employee punches and adding missing employee punches. Workgroup setup. First of all, we need to create a work group. Then we add the supervisor or supervisors who will be able to process the employees belonging to this group. Specify which supervisory functions each supervisor is able to perform. And view the employees assigned to the work group. This form only displays the employees. They need to be assigned to the work group from the employee form. If we look at the supervisor homepage, the day-to-day activities. This displays the current status of work group employees and buttons for the supervisor to perform their tasks. The hours summary is the normal employee authorization overview form and is the one that we will be concentrating on for this video. If we look at the summary homepage, we select the date preference and the various filters, and this will then show us our current employees based on the filter criteria. In this case, we're looking at yesterday's and today's records with all the filters turned on except for the processed. Optionally, we can have ranges of employee types, work groups, departments, or shifts as well. The statuses we need to consider are as follows. Absent, meaning the employee is not clocked in yet for the given date or dates. Errors, where somebody is clocked in but not booked onto a job, or where there has been a problem with posting to the native ERP system. Exceptions, which relate to clock in or out problems. Working, where the employee is currently clocked in and working on a job. Ready, basically there are no problems with this employee and it's ready to be processed. Non-working day, showing any clocking information for what is defined in the system as a non-working day. Approved, any employees who have had their data approved but not yet processed. And processed, any employees who have had their data processed. So looking at each of these in turn, if we look at absent employees, we select the absent filter and the system displays any absent employees we are responsible for. If the employee is not going to clock in, we can generate an absence by selecting the employee and hitting the absence button. This generates an absence using the employee type default absence code. Or we can clock the employee in by right-clicking on the appropriate employee and selecting the transactions option. We then enter the clock in information and hit the clock in button. This results in the employee being clocked in and in this case also automatically starts the job. Next we'll look at employees who are considered to be in error. We select the errors filter and the system displays any employees who belong to this status. If the status is a gap, we can fill it by hitting the gap fill button. This generates an indirect task using the employee default indirect task code. If this is not entered, it uses the gap fill code from the employee type. We can use the hours detail form to adjust a punch if necessary, or we can go and delete a punch. We cannot use this to delete a clock in or clock out. Or we can post a booking to ERP if the original problem with the native ERP system has been resolved. Or we can use the transactions form to create missing transaction data for the employee, hitting Start Job to start the job. We can also use this form to stop jobs, start or stop a work set, clock in or out, either at the start or end of a shift or for lunch or other breaks. Next we'll look at exception employees. Again, we use the exception filter and this displays employees who have clocked in or out in error. We can authorize the exception if necessary by selecting the employee and hitting the Authorize Exceptions button. In this case, the employee clocked in at 7:20 instead of 8 o'clock, and we are authorizing that that is acceptable. Or we can manually adjust the punch using the hours detail form. In this case, we're changing it from the actual time of 7:20 to an adjustment of 8 o'clock. Working employees. Again, if we select the working filter, this shows us employees who are currently clocked in and assigned to a job. In practice, there's no real need to adjust these unless the shift has ended and an employee has forgotten to clock out. In that case, the transactions form should be used to specify the time of the clock out and the clock out button hit. Ready employees. These are employees who have had their data entered and, if necessary, authorized and are ready to be processed. Employees can have their punches either approved or approved and processed by hitting the appropriate button. Non-working day employees. Again, we look for non-working day employees. And these are employees who have had data entered in what is normally a non-working day, either a weekend or a facility holiday. Any necessary adjustment should be made as if the employee was flagged as an error or an exception. Approved employees. Again, if we filter for approved, we'll see those employees who have had their data approved and ready to be processed. Employees can have their punches processed by hitting the appropriate button. Finally, we have the processed employees. So we look for already processed employees. These are employees who have had their data processed and are considered to be complete. Employees can have their punches reopened by hitting the appropriate button. This is only required if any late adjustments need to be made. This concludes the time track supervisory process for factory track.